Wealth is the driving force of most economies of the world, and the ability to create this has been a major determinant of the level of development of such nations and consequently the status of their continents. The term Global South, less developed, developing, or developed nation precedes or rather determines qualification into groups such as the G7, G20, BRICS, Mint, and others. Despite the vast amounts of natural resources that Africa has, with legions of youth and professional working population, the level of development and wealth creation on the continent has been limited in scope and sustainability. A grim report has stated that Africa is experiencing a decline in investments, with the total wealth in Africa noted to have fallen by 7% over the past decade, mainly because of poor returns in the three largest markets, namely South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria. According to the latest Africa Wealth Report, there is, however, optimism for the future, with a predicted rise of 38% in private wealth held in Africa to $3 trillion by 2021, and the poster child for this new growth in projections is Mauritius. The island nation remains strong with wealth growth of 80%. This is because of Mauritius' Residence by Investment program, said to be attracting a great deal of investments and interest from investors. The only other country in Africa with a similar program is Egypt. So, can Africa take a cue and learn from this if it hopes to halt the gradual fall in affluence? Our topic today, which is the decline in wealth creation in Africa, will unravel that. This is Business Edge. I am Lekan Onabanjo, standing in for Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. We apologize for starting a bit late, but then joining me from Nairobi, Kenya is Professor N Iraki, an Associate Professor, University of Nairobi, Faculty of Business and Management Sciences. It's a pleasure having you, Professor, join us on the program. Professor Iraki.
Good afternoon. I know it is Thursday morning in Nigeria. How are you?
Okay, so let's just go ahead. Now, according to the Africa Wealth Report published by Henley and Partners, now Africa's total wealth declined by 7% over the last decade. Of course, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, which was also responsible for about 2 to 3 years. But then, what other factors can we attribute the decline to?
That is not very good news for Africa. But if you look at what has been happening even before COVID, there has been a wave of political instability or some basic civil strife. If you look at the key market for foreign investment, South Africa, there was a lot of political issues after President Zuma left power. If you look at Egypt, there was a military takeover some time ago, and that must have pushed away a lot of investors. If you look at a country like Kenya, there has been political jitters because of the coming polls. And if you look at the western part of Africa, Mauritania and the Sahel, there has been a lot of political instability. Go to Nigeria, there has been some skirmishes in the north. So that political instability, in my opinion, has chased away would-be investors, and a lot of wealth is draining away instead of coming in. If we put our houses in order, that will be probably reversed.
Now, looking at the report highlighted by that particular firm, now it talked about the fact that these countries brought about poor returns in Africa's largest markets. When you talk about Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. Now, between these three countries, which one would you say holds the most influence on Africa's wealth? And in brief terms, what do you think is the cause for the poor returns by these powerful countries?
I think for historical reasons, these countries are well known by investors. Anytime I travel to US, or I go to Europe, I go to China, everybody asks me where I come from Nigeria, because Nigeria is very well known. Not just because of the big population, but because traditionally it has always been selling very good breeds in the West. So everyone knows about Nigeria. Everyone knows about Egypt because of the pyramid, because of Suez Canal, and because of a lot of studies about the history of Egypt. Everyone knows about South Africa because it's one of the biggest economies. And for a long time, It was always the news because of apartheid. So because of that historical connection, those three countries hold the biggest promise as far as foreign investment is concerned. And for South Africa, we also must add because of our large white community, which makes a lot of investors probably stay at home. So I think the four African countries, or the three countries hold the biggest promise. But I think the one that holds the biggest promise, and I'm not biased, happens to be Nigeria. Big population, out of resources that they need to be harnessed, and political stability restored.
All right, now wealth transfer cascades from the big five markets in Africa. You talk about South Africa, Egypt, and of course Nigeria. Then you can put Morocco and Kenya in the mix, which is said to account for about 50% of the continent's total affluence. Now, is there any concern that Africa's fate is directly linked to these big powers that are said to be powerful in terms of the economy? And of course, how do you think that the remaining 49 countries can keep up with this?
If you look at a small country in the Indian Ocean called Mauritius, which has a very small population, it has attracted a lot of investment, a lot of wealth from outside. And one of the biggest attractions is not just the good weather, but also political stability. The rest of African countries need to attract more money, more investment, like South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, and Kenya, and so on. They need to put their houses in order. They need to make sure that any investor bringing money there feels that it's secure, feels that the world is secure. Remember, with globalization, despite this, a lot of investors, a lot of world people have alternatives. So they are going to look for the best alternatives. So countries, African countries beyond the big four should be like a young girl. Everybody is quoting her. And probably the one who comes up with the best impression takes her home. So let's have our houses in order, political, economic, infrastructure, and whatever investors need to make sure that they prosper, they practice, and feel secure as far as their world is concerned.
South Africa has seen its total private wealth reduced from $739 billion in 2011 to $651 billion in 2021. People are asking the questions, how is that even possible? And how much of South Africa's current crunch can be linked, or should we say, would be linked to this declined wealth?
I think South Africa is a very special case because for a long time it was Africa's biggest economy before it was taken over by Nigeria. Now, there's a lot of wealth declines in South Africa, which surprises everybody, but not so surprising because if you remember after President Zuma came to power, there were a lot of instability. There was even some political violence in Zululand, and that scared a lot of investors. There were a lot of political inclinations saying that investors should be chased away, particularly those from Africa. So such rhetoric, such violence, chased away a lot of would-be investors. And yet, a lot of people are attracted to South Africa, bringing their wealth, bringing their brains, bringing their creativity. So as long as people don't feel secure in South Africa, they take their wealth away to other African countries or even to the developed countries. So political instability is very important as far as the world is concerned.
All right, now, Professor, Nigeria in 2016 with a GDP of minus 2.06 fell into recession and only exited when oil prices improved. Now, for such an economy that has become important and an import-dependent country, and of course said to be the largest in Africa, how do you think it can ensure consistent wealth creation and of course improve on revenue generation?
I think Nigeria is a special case because it's a big and well country with a lot of neighbors, well known throughout the world. Two things that Nigeria can do. One of them is to make sure there is political stability. And number two is the time Nigeria stopped depending too much on oil. Let her diversify her investment portfolio. Let's have more agriculture. Let's have more manufacturing. Let's have more innovation. Let's have more high-tech like ICT and so on. So I think the best way Nigeria can raise our revenues is simple and straight, diversify her economy. And I think trade is one of the best avenues. Nigeria is well known throughout the world. It can trade with more countries and get a lot of money beyond oil.
You will agree with me at some point that economic migration has lingered since the 80s across Africa. But now, what we have now is wealthy individuals leaving Africa and moving to other countries and other continents. Now, why are they leaving and what's can these African countries do to retain these wealthy sets of people with their businesses and their economic potential?
That's a good observation, because for a long time, the word brain drain has not been very common in African media. Well, very rarely have talked about it in the last maybe 10 years or so. And everybody thought that it was time for the Africa to benefit from brain gain. But now we are seeing not just the brain going away, but also very wealthy people. And I think the reason why they are leaving is because they don't feel secure in Africa. We don't give them confidence. So when there is political strife, when some people shout, political leaders saying we don't want people from certain countries, we don't want certain visitors, we want certain investors, they run away. And remember, there are a lot of countries elsewhere that are welcoming them. So what we need to do is maybe learn from countries like Mauritius, countries like the US, countries like UK, that attract you with your money, even give you special visa. I saw Turkey doing that. But if you have a certain level of investment, we can assure you that your investment will be taken care of. We can even give you citizenship. So we need to make investors feel at home, and they will keep their money here. They don't need to go away. Remember, Africa was one of the dark continent. It's not dark anymore. And the one way to shine more light on it is to make sure that investors, their money, their brains, and their innovation are attracted to the African continent and protected by the regulation and by the rule of law. And that is possible.
Well, Professor, in all of this quagmire and challenges that we are talking about, now one particular country that is beaming a ray of hope is Mauritius. According to reports, with less than just 1.5 million residents, it's recorded the fastest growth rate in its wealth market, jumping by 74% in 10 years. Now tell us, what's actually going on in Mauritius, and how come it has been able to spring up opportunities to drive its economy and to drive its wealth?
I think if I got the question right, it was about Nigeria, it was about Mauritius, and why Mauritius has attracted a lot of investment in the last few years. I've even seen Kenyan companies going to invest in Mauritius because it's a very attractive country. When you put money there, you are sure your money is going to grow. When you put your money there, you are sure it's not going to be disturbed by political disturbance or appropriation or nationalization. So that small island country has put its house in order. And those who have been there, who have invested there, have seen have seen benefits. And they have been able to go and talk to other investors through the media or even through the exchanges and tell them that once you put your money, it is secure. And there's no reason why other African countries cannot do the same. They can be Mauritius, they have more resources, they have bigger population, and they can attract more investors and develop like that. But you also have to remember that Mauritius is a very small country. It has to focus on what it has the biggest strength, which happens to be financial sector. And that particular strength can be tapped by other countries, but not in finance, but in whichever sectors they have strength in. Nigerian oil, Kenyan infrastructure, South African minerals, or whichever area an African country is good at. It is possible.
So, Professor, now let's look at Africans in diaspora. What do you think can be done to woo them, to bring them back to their native lands so that they can also develop the economy and, of course, the continent and increase its wealth?
So you asked what we can do to bring the Africans back to Africa?
Yes.
I think that's a very important observation, because the biggest impact to African growth is not minerals, it is not land, it's actually brain. If you look at a country like the US, they have developed so much because they have been able to attract brains from all over the world. But why do people want to go to the US? Why do people want to go to UK and other countries? It's because they are taken care of, they are appreciated, and very important, they are given life incentives. If I'm a medical doctor and I go to the US and I'm given light salary, right working environment, I will stick there. So Africa must also improve its infrastructure so that its intellectuals can come here. People should be given good salaries, or should be given good houses, or should be given things like getting mobility. Should feel that the working environment is useful, so they don't need to go anywhere else. So let's improve the working environment, give people incentives, and they have no reason to leave Africa. They take it their home and they contribute to Africa's economic growth.
All right, so finally, Professor, we understand that African governments are trying to change narratives when you talk about infrastructural deficits. Now, they are beginning to do a lot of investments in terms of building infrastructures and bringing about development. You talk about Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, and some other African countries. Now, tell me, do you think, quickly now, tell me, do you actually think this can bring about more foreign direct investments into Africa? Do you think this will also improve its revenue base moving forward?
I have seen that in Kenya, a lot of Chinese investments. I've seen China doing a lot of investments in Ethiopia, and I've seen a lot of other Western countries bringing a lot of investment, a lot of money in Africa. And one of the areas they seem to be focusing on seems to be oil and gas and infrastructure. And I believe if African countries can have that, so that they improve the productive capacity of the continent. But when I'm an investor, I come and buy good highways, good roads, good airports, good education system, good health system. I have no reason to leave the continent. And I'll be able to invite other investors and maybe put more money so that this continent is not just developed by the outsiders, but also us. So I think that is the investment in the right direction, improve the productive capacity of the continent, but we must always remember that the best way to develop Africa is not foreigners, it is Africa themselves. We first put the house in order before we bring other people to come and help us. It starts at home.
Thank you so much, Professor N Iraki, for being part of the program. Really appreciate your presence.
Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
All right, good afternoon. Of course, we have so many challenges in terms of its economy. That's Africa now, in terms of economy and its wealth. It is declining, as reports have said. But then, Mauritius is a shining light. It is changing the narratives, and maybe African countries can take a cue from this and see what they can do to change the dynamics and, of course, bring about a more improved wealth spinning around Africa. Let's quickly go for a break, and when we return, we'll bring you NC4 to watch. Do stay with us. Let's quickly take you through NC4 to watch, looking at these trending stories. Now, about $300 million foreign direct investment inflow is expected into Nigeria from the United Kingdom. When concluded, the deal, which is coming as a support for small and medium-sized enterprises in Nigeria, is expected to generate over $300 million in foreign direct investments for Nigeria and directly create 5,000 jobs. Now, South African farmers are expected to harvest 9.8% less maize in the 2021-2022 season compared with the previous season. The government's Crop Estimates Committee has revealed. The CEC second summer crop forecast estimates the 2022 harvest at 14.723 million tons, down from the 16.1315 million tons harvested last season. The harvest is expected to consist of 7.553 million tons of white maize used for human consumption and 7.170 million tons of yellow maize used mainly in animal feed. To other stories now, seeking an end to the 45-day strike in South African gold mining operations, platinum and gold producer Sibanye-Stillwater last week upped its offer to 850 rands a month from the previous 700. The two major trade unions, the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union and the National Union of Mine Workers, declared a strike on March 9 while holding firm to their demands for 1,000 rands a month. Finally, Kenya is in talks to import a third of its fuel from the United Arab Emirates on credit in efforts to cut the dominance of oil majors who have been blamed for fuel shortages. Top officials in the energy sector who do not want to be identified said that the negotiations will allow the state-owned National Oil Corporation of Kenya to ship in 30% of the country's diesel and petrol needs. And that's what we have for you on Business Edge for today. Do not forget that you can visit our social media platforms at News Central TV. Go to our website, www.newscentral.africa, and also download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store so that you can get yourself engaged with the so many stories that we have for you there. We'll see you some other time. I will see you some other time. I am Lekan Onabanjo. Have a wonderful day.